Ciao everyone and welcome back to our channel. I'm Eleonora, I'm a lead migration agent at Green Wings Migration, and today the topic that I want to discuss for you is migration options in the construction industry. However, before we start, I have a big favor to ask you. So I asked my marketing team to pull out some numbers about this YouTube channel that we have been creating and working on for some months now. And the results are really amazing. They told me that you guys, more than 70,000 people have been watching me, more than 5,000 hours of watching have been recorded. And this is really a result that I could have never imagined. Like if you asked me some years ago if I would ever do YouTube videos and be kind of so successful, I would never say yes. So this is an amazing result for me and my team. However, there is a little thing that I would like to ask you. It turns out that only less than 5% people actually subscribe to the channel. It's such a small gesture for you and it means so much for us. So if the channel grows, it means that we might be able to bring more people onto the channel as well. So if more people see that this channel is actually appreciated and wanted by you as the public, we might be able to invite other industry leaders, other migration agents, other professionals that could help you in your journey in order to give you their perspective on what migrating to Australia means. So if you really feel like we're doing a good job and you would like to see more and in more depth videos, please subscribe and continue to follow us. And now let's talk about the construction industry. So first of all, what is the construction industry? This seems to be like a simple question, but it can be quite tricky. Construction industry includes everything from white collar jobs to blue collar jobs, and in there we have the tradies and the laborers. So obviously we're talking about construction for big infrastructure as well as residential, but there might be construction in the engineering sphere as well. So it's not a limited industry sector. There are plenty of opportunities at all levels, and this is also reflected in the migration program that Australia has put into place. When it comes to visa options in the construction industry, we can really explore every possible visa option available. Obviously, work visa options. So we're talking about the skill visas, which are those programs where the government or the state government or the federal government invites you to apply for a visa because they feel like your profile is needed and suitable to migrate. Then we have the sponsor visas, where an Australian business is willing to employ you on a full-time basis, and therefore it helps you get this work permit, which is the visa. And finally, we have the DAMA sponsors, which basically work in the same way as a normal sponsorship, but gives you more options because they tend to bring people to the regions. Therefore, they allow for more concessions. And on DAMAs, we've recorded many videos before. So if you haven't watched them yet, just go back, scroll through the previous videos. You will see so many information about the DAMA programs, what they are, where they are, what kind of concession they provide, not only for the construction industry, which is what we're talking about today, but any other industry as well. When we talk about migration, we can try to draw a line in the sand to give you a general idea of what are the criteria that you should be meeting to migrate. Notwithstanding the fact that every visa has its own criteria. Okay, so what I'm about to discuss now, take it with a pinch of salt because that's the general rule of thumb that we put together, but definitely your specific occupation, the specific visa you are applying for in certain circumstances, your specific skill profile can actually lead to However, take this with a pinch of salt. Anything I'm about to tell you now is just a general advice. Your individual circumstances, your occupation, the visa that you are applying for, the state where you are could actually provide you with different sets of criteria to be met. So just make sure that you understand the general rules, but then also make sure that you liaise with a professional to understand if the general rules apply to you or if you might be able to look at different set of rules for your specific circumstances. So when we apply for work visas, there are certain things that the department will look at. First of all, your qualifications, okay? So whether you are like a manager, like a construction project manager, for example, a tradie, like a carpenter, or a laborer, like a herb moving technician, there will be qualifications that you must demonstrate having. And this is very true, especially for managers levels professionals. When, however, we are discussing options for tradespeople and laborers, it might be possible to use your work experience to substitute a qualification that you might not have. So it's very common in certain occupations to become a skilled worker without having studied before. So you might become a skilled carpenter after 4 years of apprenticeship, for example. Or you might just complete your compulsory studies. You know, in Italy, for example, you have to study until you are 16 years old, and then you just start working without being in a formal apprenticeship, but then you learn the job and the art of being a bricklayer. So there are different sets of circumstances that we must take into consideration. But then again, the rule of thumb is for a visa, you normally have to have a combination of relevant work experience and relevant qualification. In certain circumstances, a longer work experience can actually substitute the qualification that you might not have. This leads to the second criterion that in many cases should be demonstrated, which is the ability to pass a formal skills assessment. Skills assessment is a procedure that is needed for migration purposes, but it's not a visa application. So this is a fairly common mistake that I discuss with my clients. Many people think that passing a skills assessment equates to being eligible automatically for a visa. Not true. So the skills assessment is a document, effectively a piece of paper that you must obtain, especially when you attempt to migrate permanently with a permanent visa option. But that is simply the confirmation from the relevant authority that your qualifications level, your qualifications topic, subject, and the work experience that you develop are okay to migrate to Australia under a certain visa scheme. That's not a visa application. Age limit is the third factor. Let's say that for the majority of visas, definitely for all permanent residency visa options that are outside the regional schemes, 45 years of age is the limit beyond which you cannot obtain permanent residency. Temporary residency, though, allows you to obtain multiple visas. There are no limits in 482 SID visas, for example, but when it comes to PR, 45 is generally the cutoff age. Then we have English proficiency. It seems like, a trivial issues because in many cases you definitely are able to leave without having super exceptional English skills. But then again, depending on the visa that you want to apply for, you must demonstrate a certain level of competency. At the very basic level, vocational English, which is IELTS 5 or PT 36, is the entry level. But if you aim for a skill visa, for example, you might have to go even higher, so proficient level or superior level. And finally, we have the licensing requirements. So in the construction industry, certain occupations are subject to licensing requirements. It means that without license, you cannot perform the occupation. Some licenses can be quite complicated. I'm talking about, for example, the licenses for electricians or plumbers or air conditioning mechanics. They have to go through very specific steps in order to get recognized. Others are not really licenses, they are called tickets. So they are permissions that you obtain, generally after a very short course that could be a few hours or few days, where they explain you how certain machines are operated. They give you an idea of the health and safety measures that you need to adhere to when you are on site. And the most common ticket that you should obtain in order to work in the construction industry is the white card. That's an induction sort of thing that confirms you have been introduced to all the health and safety measures that apply on construction sites. And if you don't have a valid white card, in most cases, I would say pretty much any time, you will never be allowed on a construction site. So if you are thinking to migrate to Australia, make sure that you understand what you need to do to get your white card and keep it with you all the time, because that's very important. Pretty much as if it was a driver's license sort of thing. With all these restrictions, of course, we understand how important and how beneficial the DAMA programs are. Again, DAMAs are these sponsorship programs specific for certain regions in Australia, and the DAMAs aim to boost the economy and the population in the regions. So the government understands that to convince people going and establish themselves in the regions, they have to offer something. And in most cases, what they offer is some more convenient options, some more convenient criteria to get their visas approved. DAMAs are sponsorship, again, so very important. You must have a sponsor to apply for a DAMA. They are never independent processes. But what you can independently do is to get yourself ready for the specific DAMA program that you're interested into, so that when you do come across an employer who's willing to offer you a position, you are already ready for them. So I think I discussed this in the past as well. I cannot stress enough how important proactiveness is when it comes to migration. If you show your employer that you've done everything it takes to obtain the visa, they will see you not as a good worker, but as someone who is really committed in getting what they need, in getting what they want. So that's obviously a bonus when your employer evaluates your request for a visa opportunity. DAMAs, as I said, they come particularly handy in this context because they can allow you to be sponsored in occupations that would not normally be sponsorable. They sometimes allow for lower English level. So the understanding is English competency in certain jobs is very important when it comes to listening, so understanding when someone is talking to you and replying to these people. However, it might not be that beneficial that someone in the construction industry knows how to write an essay perfectly, for example. So reading and writing, yes, they are important. I'm not saying that you need to be literate, but you don't necessarily need to have a high level of a 6 or of a 7 in order to obtain your visa in the DAMA context, because it's accepted that as long as you can communicate properly and understand properly, you can perform well nonetheless. Age concessions are also very important in the DAMAs. So we see that in the majority of programs, there are concessions that allow you to obtain PR up until 55 years old. So we are talking about a massive age gap from 45 in normal programs to 55 in the DAMAs. That gives you 10 extra years of your life to come to Australia and obtain your permanent residency. That's quite impressive. And finally, one concession that may seem a little bit unfair on the employee, but it's actually very fair on the employer, is the salary concession. So in sponsorship options, people must be paid a certain minimum amount, which currently is $73,150 plus superannuation. In the city, this is a fairly average salary. Someone could argue that it's still a little bit of a lower salary compared to the rising cost of living. In the regions, it might be a very high salary. So living in regions normally should be a little bit less expensive than in the city centers. And obviously this impacts and reflects on the employer's ability to afford certain salaries. So to make the region more attractive, to make the sponsorship program more attractive as well, the government came up with this idea that in certain DAMAs, for certain occupations, not across the board, it's possible for the employer to offer you a minimum salary that is a little bit less than what you would get if you were sponsorable in the cities. Normally, this is about 10% less. So if in the city you have to get this 73,150 per year, in the regions it should be 69 something. Okay, so it's not a massive amount reduction, but definitely it's a help for the employer. Construction is booming all over in Australia, especially since the COVID pandemic, where many incentives were introduced by the government to boost the economy in a period where the economy was pretty much flat, have led to this impressive demand of new housing, new builds, restorations, both in the residential and in the commercial sphere as well. And I mean, we must be honest, right now Australia is not doing extremely well on this point, so there is a great demand, but not enough supply. So we are facing on a daily basis issues about houses taking forever to be built and building permits taking forever to be issued, but simply because if they were quicker in issuing them, there still wouldn't be enough workforce to actually build those houses. So certain states have come up with some programs that help to incentivize the industry. They are monetary incentives, so they give money away to either businesses, workers, or migrants in order to incentivize using the migration options and bring more people into the country in order to have a wider workforce that could actually take care of all those building projects that are currently sitting there. So there are a few around. In WA we have two, Western Australia we have two options. One is the construction visa subsidy program. That's for employers who sponsor migrants, as well as skilled migrants who obtain their skilled visas through the state nomination program. The contribution here is up to $10,000. We will post the link so you can have a better read, but the overall idea of the program is you enroll, so you create a profile with the government, and then by the time that you pass through certain stages of your visa application, you make a claim, and if the government approves your claim, then they pay you back. So you anticipate the money, both whether you are an employer or a visa applicant, it's the same. So you first pay, show them you've paid, and then they will pay you back a certain amount of money depending on the program and the stream that you are using. The second program that WA created is Build a Life in WA. So this is not for international migrants, okay? So if you are an overseas resident or a temporary visa holder, you cannot use this program. But this is particularly useful if you are a permanent resident, a citizen, or a New Zealander. If you are a New Zealander, you can be on a 444 visa, the special category visa. It will make you eligible for this option. So essentially, if you are currently settled in any other state, not WA, but you want to relocate here because you find a job offer here, you could ask to be enrolled in the program. And in this case, the contribution to your relocation is up to $5,000. So it's not bad. Other states that created something similar are Northern Territory and South Australia. So Northern Territory, they boosted the construction industry by giving money to new home builders. So if you want to build your house in Northern Territory, you might get some incentive from the government. This is something that happened during the COVID pandemic in WA as well. The overall idea here is you as the builder, the homeowner, you will have more money in your pocket to spend. So potentially whatever amount of money is refunded to you by the government, you will reinvest it in the construction of your house, and that will create new job opportunities for workers in the state. And in South Australia is a Stay in South Australia bonus, so pretty much the same thing. It's being introduced right now. I don't believe it's active yet, but it's being proposed. So if you work in the construction and you live in South Australia, you will receive some incentives, some monetary incentives as well. The last thing that I wanted to discuss with you were actually the challenges of trying to migrate in Australia as a construction industry worker. So we discussed about what kind of occupations you could use. We discussed about what visas you could use. We discussed about the criteria that in many cases you should meet. But on a very real level, in any consultation I have on a daily basis with my clients, some certain questions come up quite frequently. Like, for example, what if my qualifications are not recognized? Or what if I come from a country where cash in hand work is the norm? Or what if I really genuinely struggle with the English and is, out of my control the level I can achieve? Those are all very important points, okay? So when it comes to proving your work experience, I do understand and I greatly appreciate that in certain countries, as I said before, working cash in hand is not strange. I'm not saying it's legal, I say it's normal, it's accepted is what happens and you can't do anything about it. However, if you are planning to migrate to Australia, please do understand that being able to prove your experience is fundamental. So try to change your job, change your employer, go to work for someone who is more in appreciation of the right thing that should be done. Or maybe before making the move to Australia, try to make the move to a closer country where you might have better chances of finding a properly documented job. And then after you have accrued the amount of experience that you need to migrate to Australia, you can finally make the move, okay? Another issue could be the qualification recognition. So I'm not saying, as I said before, certain jobs, you may learn how to do them, but without attending classes. Or sometimes you do attend classes, but the certificate, the piece of paper that you receive is not automatically recognized in Australia as being substantially equivalent. So you might have something that says diploma from back home, but that is not necessarily a diploma in Australia. Again, I'm making an example that for me is very common. As you know, I come from Italy. In Italy, we go through 5 years of high school, and a very common qualification is a diploma in surveying. That is definitely not a diploma, and that is definitely not considered surveying in Australian terms. So, there are different terminologies, different considerations that come into place. It's important to understand as soon as possible if whatever you have, whatever is consistent in your profile, finds an automatic, let's say, translation in the Australian market, because if not, we need to find a way to compare your qualifications. That could happen through formal studies again. I know, not ideal, especially if you are in your 30s, you may not be willing to study again, but it could be necessary if you are serious about your migration prospects. It could be through RPL, recognition of prior learning. So for certain more technical occupations, as I said, it's fair enough that you learn how to do the job on the job itself, but now to migrate, you need a qualification. There are schools that will evaluate your profile, your abilities, your skills, and if you are found to be equivalent to the Australian worker, to the Australian qualified worker, they'll give you the certificate. This process is legal, okay, and it's called recognition of prior learning. Another thing could be, for example, to do a skills assessment. Certain skills assessing authorities, I'm thinking about VetAssess, for example, they've been authorized by the government to run skills assessments in certain trades occupations, and for some of them they offer you the possibility to demonstrate a longer amount of documented experience, and when everything checks out, they will issue you the Australian certificate. Okay, so think, for example, carpenters. If you are a skilled carpenter with at least 5 years of experience but no piece of paper, you might apply for a skills assessment with VetAssess. You go through 2 stages. The first stage is a documentary evaluation, and if you pass it, you'll go through the second stage, which is an interview, a technical interview with a VetAssess assessor. And if the assessor is satisfied of your knowledge, then you get the skills assessment letter as well as the Australian Certificate 3 in carpentry. Okay, so different options to go about it, but then again, it's important to know as soon as possible, at least at the beginning of your migration adventure, what you need to do. Licensing, that's a very hot topic to discuss. So as I said before, certain licenses are very hard to get. If you are an electrician, if you are a plumber, if you are a HVAC mechanic, it's going to be tough. So it's important that you approach a registered migration agent as soon as possible so that they can give you guidance about the different steps that you need to go through. In most cases, just so that you know, you will have to get a provisional license first, and this will be based on your, again, documented experience and potentially qualifications that you obtain from your home country. And then after a period of supervision, you might be able to apply for your full license. Remembering that permanent residency applications in most cases require you to hold a full license, but temporary residency applications would allow you to go through the process with a temporary or provisional license. And the last thing I wanted to discuss with you is, again, the language barrier. Notwithstanding the fact that in the occupation that you work, you might not need to have extremely high level of English, do yourself a favor and make sure that you get English ready, as I like to say. It's important to have at least, basic communication skills, because that allows you to obtain better job opportunities, to negotiate your position on the job better, and also to integrate in the society, in the job culture of the employer where you have been offered a position. So don't leave your home country completely ignoring the language. I know that it was done before, absolutely, I acknowledge that, but that doesn't mean that it will be easy. So if you do invest a little bit of time, a little bit of money as well, before leaving your country in learning the language, you will definitely see a difference in your experience once you are here compared to people who came and could not speak English at all. So I think I discussed everything that I wanted to discuss for you today. In the notes of this video, you will find the link to all the 13 DAMA programs available. We did a video last week about DAMA options for restaurant managers, and I was able to tell you in each different DAMA what kind of qualifications and experience skills assessment you should achieve in order to become eligible. You surely understand this is not possible in such a broad industry where we have zillions of occupations available, okay? So if you are thinking about migrating to Australia using a DAMA in the construction industry, please use the links we're giving you. Find the occupations that you think you are eligible for, and feel free to send us a message or an email with your inquiry. Like, let us know, I come from this country, I want to migrate with this occupation, and I think I will be eligible in this DAMA program. And it will be our pleasure to give you preliminary information about your prospects, and if necessary, if it looks like you can actually make it, we can set up a consultation and give you more formal advice. All right, so for today, that's it. As usual, if you have any question, doubts, you want to double check something with me or my colleagues, feel free to contact us. You can reach us through social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn as well. You can send us an email, or you can look on our website through our booking system. If you need to book a consultation with us, use that system, because that shows you our availability and you can choose the preferred timing. And don't forget, as I said at the beginning of the video, subscribe to the channel. That's important for us, and really it's just a 2 seconds action for you. Thank you so much. See you next time.